All right, in theory we're live. Hello, hello. Is anyone out there? Can anyone hear me?
Something's happening.
Something's happening.
Seeing an ad.
An ad is good. An ad means we're
It's
online.
good. Man eating a taco.
For anyone who's, well, I guess
Oh
everyone.
my gosh. Naked chicken chalupa.
I'm.
Yeah.
I can see us. I can see us.
I think it's working.
Testing.
Hold on. It's still. I see.
I see us.
Oh,
Can you hear us?
let's see.
Oh, I muted my computer.
I can hear us.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, I heard us. Okay. Hi everyone. We're live. We did it. My name is Brian Francis. I'm a contributing editor to Gamasutra. If you're out there in the audience, please say hi to us in the chat. I'm joined today by two wonderful people. It was three yesterday, but one of them had to run away. Chris and Juliet. Chris, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Chris Graft, editor in chief of Gamasutra.
And Juliet, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Juliet Nuzzo, and I am a senior development manager at Riot Games, and I work on League of Legends.
And I'm so excited because we are here today to. I love League of Legends. It's one of my favorite multiplayer games ever to come out in the history of video games. And I'm excited to talk to Juliet because Juliet, you're here because you're on some roundtables at GDC, right? Can you explain those for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am leading with one of my excellent coworkers, Anthony Leung. We are leading the Production Level Up Roundtable series. So there's actually going to be 3 days, and we're going to be focusing in on a couple different topics, one each day. So the first one, we'll be talking about how do you build an awesome world-class team culture at your studio. The next day, we'll be talking about managing your stakeholders and how to really leverage them to make your product better. And then we'll also be talking about leading for innovation. So in the face of crazy pressing deadlines, how do you still make sure that your teams are innovating?
Yeah, and you did these roundtables at last year's GDC, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Last year, it was really fun for us because we went in and we really wanted to try to change up the format of how roundtables are held. So traditionally, the roundtables that we've attended before have just been large open room discussions. And what I kind of noticed is that it sometimes can be challenging to have a really meaningful conversation when you have 100 different people in the room at the same time trying to talk, contribute, and share ideas.
Yeah.
And so we brought some of the facilitation techniques. That's something I'm really passionate about and that we leverage a lot here at Riot to the roundtables. And folks ended up really liking it. We had some great small group conversations over the course of the 3 days there. So we figured we'd bring them back again this year.
Right
It's
on.
pretty like meta kind of. You brought production practices to the production roundtable.
Yeah.
Yeah. With facilitation techniques, can you give us a little insight into what that is?
Before we do that, I need to get us set up with what we're going to be doing today. Sorry, just need to.
Oh yeah, there's something else going on.
Yeah.
We're
Okay.
just
So we're going to
loving
we're also going to play some League of Legends. We're going to challenge Juliet not just to answer our questions, our rapid fire questions about working on League of Legends, but we are also going to play some ARAM just so that just for funsies.
To make it harder to speak.
Yeah, to make it harder to speak. So, but also, I mean, this is also we like to do this because we also like to give us any opportunity for you in the chat, if you're watching, to ask questions of Juliet about specifically the stuff she works on. So Chris and I will be quizzing her about roundtables and production and game production, but if you want to know what it's like to work inside the really cool halls of Riot Games, just feel free to ask in the chat. And Chris Graft, because I will be staring at League, trying not to die, will hopefully remember to ask those questions. I'll try to get some in too. We'll work together on this. All right,
I'll try to remember to ask some questions.
So I'm going to go ahead and get the ARAM set up here.
Yeah. So facilitation techniques. Can you talk about that a little bit? How that works at Riot?
Yeah. So facilitation is something that I learned about really for the first time when I joined Riot. And what's actually really cool about facilitation is it's all about unlocking the brilliance of folks inside the room. And so the idea is you can be leading a meeting, but you actually can be leading a meeting from the back of the meeting room, right? It doesn't mean that you need to be the one who's contributing 100% of the opinions, right, and steering and guiding the conversation, because chances are that you have the team that you're working with there. They're all smart people and they've got great ideas. And a lot of times you just need a little bit of added structure to sort of help define and lead that meeting. So what we do with facilitation is typically we'll try to design sessions where it's really thoughtful. Try to design sessions. So each meeting here that we hold at Riot, we try to sort of think about different styles of communication, right? So maybe you have someone on your team who is a little bit more quiet or a little bit more introverted, right? And that means that that individual might not necessarily feel comfortable just jumping in the middle of a conversation that's a really heated debate, right? So we'll utilize techniques like silent brainstorming, mind mapping. There's a lot of really cool activities and ceremonies that you can do that are part of sort of being a facilitator. But the heart of it is really about you're leading the meeting as kind of a neutral party that, again, is just sort of about unlocking the wisdom of the room and helping them drive to an outcome together.
That's really interesting. Silent brainstorming, that sounds pretty self-explanatory. So if I'm a silent brainstormer though, and I'm just like in a meeting at Riot, like how will you know that I'm silently brainstorming?
Yeah, so when I say
thinking really hard.
No, so when I say silent brainstorming, actually what I mean by that is that so there'll be, let's say we're thinking about like a new design, right? So instead of going in the room and sitting around the table and saying, okay guys, everybody in the room just shout out the great ideas that you have, right? For what we should be doing next. And let's say that's me just scribing on a whiteboard what folks are saying. Instead of doing that, right, which is kind of I'd say probably the default way a lot of meetings are run, right? You come in with an agenda, you come in with a purpose, and you say, okay, let's talk about this. That might not work, like I said, for that individual who takes a little bit more time to internally process or isn't the person who's going to necessarily like jump in and really feel comfortable in that kind of setting. So instead, something you might do is give everyone, sets of sticky notes. And like sticky notes are like one of my secret weapons, right, in my toolkit. And say, okay, we're going to actually start this meeting. Everyone take 2 minutes with your sticky notes, jot down one idea per Post-it note. What are your best ideas? And then bringing those all up together on the board, right? So you're giving those people who kind of process information differently, maybe a little bit are quieter, so they're a little bit more in the back of meetings, a chance to really participate and engage in the exact same way that the folks who are really more extroverted would. And a lot of that comes from just understanding who your team is and who you're working with on your teams.
So it's interesting. I know this will sound like a general question, but it seems like producers think about this a lot. What is a producer? What is the job of a producer, the role?
Yeah, so it's funny because I think producer means a lot of different things, a lot of different studios, right? And so even for myself, over the course of my career, I've had that title before, and it's meant different things at different studios. So at Riot, we have production actually split up into roles. And so one of those roles is product lead on the team, so that's oftentimes played by a product manager. And then we have delivery leads, which are much more focused on helping team delivery. And as part of that, there's a lot of work that goes into that. That means also, how do we, sustain that culture? How do we make sure that how do we make sure that there are mechanisms built in so the team is working sustainably? It's at the heart of what I do. There's also a lot of coaching and mentoring of individuals. So working with folks on communication skills. They're really making sure that at the end of the day, we really are keeping in touch.
Okay.
Julie, if you can do me a favor, for some reason your mic volume is like dropping lower. If you could,
it's I think that could be it's picking up your clicking. So then it's kind of, I think Brian. I mean, it's picking up Brian's clicking.
Oh shoot! I'm sorry.
And then it's like making like the audio go in and out. But yeah, it's so you're talking about building a team, and I think that's something that is like particularly for a studio as large as Riot. I mean, what's your approach to building like this world-class team culture that you're talking about?
Yeah, I think it starts with initially how the team is formed, right? And so for us, one of the activities that our delivery leads will typically run with the team is actually project chartering. And that's something I haven't actually utilized at any other studio I've worked at before, but it's honestly ended up being kind of a superpower for us. And so you end up having a lot of conversations in team sheltering where you're sort of up front, working out all of these conversations that wouldn't end up coming up normally until you're in the heat of development. And at that point, you want to make sure that you're actually able to focus much more on the product that you're delivering. So we'll talk about things like, okay, what is the mission of our team? What is the working agreement for how this is actually going to work together? So it sounds simple, but even basic things like, how do we prefer to communicate with each other? How do we want to give feedback to each other, right? And so some people, prefer, hey, perhaps just one-on-one. I'm not really comfortable in the individual meeting room with you, calling me out. Others are much more direct, right? They'll say, you know what, actually, in the moment, in a meeting, if you think that I'm acting out of not respectful, call me out on it right then. And so again, it's just a lot of these kind of minor conversations that you oftentimes you wouldn't have until they come up, right? Front loading them, and it really sets up the team for a successful sort of culture.
Yeah, it's interesting hearing you talk about this stuff because a lot of it sounds like how much of this is like a lot of it's applicable. It sounds like to like non-game development. And even outside of software development, how much influence do you have in your job as a producer from the outside?
What do you mean by outside? Sorry.
Well, from outside, like outside industries, know. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think we look everywhere for, especially in the Agile community. What's new? What are the best ideas? That's really kind of at the heart of what we do at Riot, and particularly on Dev Manager, really focus on making sure we're always learning. And so, yeah, that doesn't matter if it's from a tech company, that could be reading blogs from Spotify, that could be reading things from Google. There's definitely a lot to learn outside of the game dev space as well.
Yeah. So, how's ARAM going right now, Bryant?
We're doing okay. We only have one kill somehow.
I muted myself, so I can't tell them how I'm handling right now.
Yeah. So
it's a peaceful ARM.
I unmuted myself. I think it's going fun. There's a question in the chat for Juliet. If you could grab that, Chris.
Yeah.
Do you still need me to mute, by the way?
No, I think that we just had some random issues, but yeah, I don't think you need to mute necessarily.
Okay, that makes it easier.
So we have a question from Rhetoric. When setting that silent brainstorm up, do you have catalyst words or themes to help with unique thoughts to be developed?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's definitely a technique you can use for sure. Oftentimes before, I've actually used pictures are great too. And so we were like recently doing a brainstorm on some competitive stuff, and I ended up pulling in pictures of the Olympics and sports teams and trophies, and so that can also be like a great visual stimulation. Is great. I think that and again, start with a great way to start too.
So the GDC roundtables, can you what kind of production mistakes do you see since you did it last year, or you hear about that are the most common?
Well, that's an interesting question, actually. Yeah, I'd say that I think a lot of studios out there are encountering similar challenges, right? We all want to know how to do more with less, and I think that focus is something that's really important. So I'm actually reading this awesome book right now that I'll totally plug for everyone to read. That's called Essentialism, the Disciplined Art of Less. And it really insists about how to preserve focus yourself. And the heart of the book is sort of, if you don't prioritize your life, someone else will for you. And I think the same goes for teams. Really making sure that we're taking that agile practice from agile on teams, and really focus on what is the highest impact you be doing, not I want to have a eat and eat it too.
Yeah, I will say so. No one can see Bryant right now, but
they can.
They can?
Yeah, but I'm
Oh,
very
okay.
tiny, but I'm in the bottom left-hand corner. I'm in the bottom quarter.
Well, if you can't see him, like Juliet has a very relaxed face. I can barely tell that she's playing this game. Whereas Brian
Is he like serious?
yeah, he's got the tongue out.
I don't play Akali, and I am trying to not die as Akali right now, but I somehow got first blood, so
like Juliet play. I mean, she works.
I'm under a lot of pressure. Thresh is in the stream.
ARAM may be my go-to lunchtime activity.
It was for me when I was working at my last job, because we'd get on and all play ARAM together, because it was great. 30 minutes, 20-30 minutes.
Yeah, my team, Pitt, we absolutely love playing ARAM. Like I said, it's go grab some food, get back to your desk, it's ARAM time. Or a ham, as I prefer to call it, because you just got to go ham.
So you mentioned trying to do more with less. Mm-hmm. The teams that you work with at Riot, like about how big do you try to keep them?
I think that really depends on the project that we're building. In general, I think the Scrum kind of guideline is usually 5 to 7 is a great place to start with your team size, because you make sure then that you're going to be sort of keeping that team as a close-knit unit. Occasionally, we'll definitely go over that depending on the complexity of the project we're working on. And the other challenge I think that we have here at Riot, as opposed to some of the other studios I've worked on before, because I've worked in console development as well, is we also have to maintain live product, right? And so keeping what we have on live today in an awesome shape, that doesn't come for free either. And so if there is a team that has, let's say, a higher sort of live support cost. So for instance, like one of the teams that I work with is the competitive team that owns ranked services. That team may be a little larger in size just because we know that there will be work that'll come up in addition to the people work that they have to maintain the live service and keep things running.
So if you're a small team, which a lot of Gamasutra readers are part of, are there any kind of you had mentioned focus, but are there other ways that small groups of people can just general guidelines to increase their productivity with limited resources?
I'd say definitely take a look at your studio's meeting culture. Even in small teams, I think the temptation can be to involve everyone in a lot of conversations, and a lot of times that ends up happening in a meeting room. And so one of the techniques that I've used with a lot of my teams here at Riot is implementing something called focus weeks. So if you are running Scrum on your team, and let's say you're running, let's say a 2-week sprint cadence, right? The idea would be, sorry, I'm trying to use my ult for that one.
Yeah, that was great.
Okay. So yeah, working with your Scrum team on a 2-week cadence. So maybe taking that first week that you have with your team, and that's the week where you're probably doing retrospectives. You're probably doing planning with your team as well during that time period, and then taking that next week in your sprint cadence and making that a focus week for your team. And that's the time where your team will actively push on. So let's say that you had one-on-one meetings where your team members, kind of give each other feedback, right? That's something that we spend a lot of time with. That you're getting feedback, because that's the main mechanism we have. Where you have your planning and your retrospective, and then you that second week 100% focus on just delivery, and that's actually been really beneficial for our teams. I think that
Here, let's take a look at the game. So how's it going, Bryant?
I'm diving, and I'm almost getting these great kills, but I'm...
If only it was like course with hand grenades.
The problem is I feel like Akali's mechanics changed at some point from when I last tried to actually learn her, and so I'm not like my muscle memory is not serving me very well right now. This Braum on our team though is really good. I really like him. He's a very
in chat right now. Go Gaming tournaments comments ham.
Emergent work for life.
And then let's see. We have another question from Redrick wondering how large is your scope as a producer, art/development/concept.
Yeah, so all of our teams at Riot are on League are cross-functional, and so that means that we're going to have every discipline basically that we need in order to ship the project. So that'll typically be art, that will be engineering, that'll be game design, that will be QA. And so yeah, we work with basically every group on the dev team. But for us, a lot of the responsibilities that we have, I mean, we really try to make it so that our teams are autonomous, right? And we find that the best work from teams comes from teams that really feel like they own their problem space. So it's less about what is my individual scope versus like how can I really empower these teams to set them up for success.
Yeah. Another question from Spoder Girl. In short, how was your path to the job you have today?
Yeah, so actually I started out in QA, and the first studio that I worked at was Harmonix. Absolutely loved working there. And in my time in QA, I really didn't even understand what a producer did in video games then. I just knew that I loved playing games and that it was a place where I potentially, wanted to make my career. And then I started seeing what a producer did, and I was like, hey, this is the person who's chatting with folks. This is the person who's coordinating. And I kind of thought, that sounds like what I'm good at. That sounds like the things that I naturally am inclined to do. And so from there, I basically decided that production was what I wanted to pursue. And so I spent the next 2 years really trying to do whatever I could to learn my confident craft on my own. And so that meant going to Scrum Master training and a ton of reading. And so then from there, I made a career to 38 Studios where I ended up becoming a producer there. I kind of made it my job there ever since the studio when I applied there and started working there. 100% knew that I wanted to be a producer. That is really helpful. If you want to become a producer, make sure everybody knows what your goals are. And so then when a production, opportunity was offered at the studio, I was basically the first person that folks thought of. Also had a great mentor there as well, and so that's definitely something I would say that's pretty key. Find people who are kicking ass at what they do, and find people that inspire you, and then cling to those people. Ask those people to be your mentor. I still keep in touch with my mentor from 38 Studios. He actually just came out to Riot to visit just a week ago, and he's been a really powerful influence even in my career today. So so from there, it's like I said, I've just been kind of on the production track and looking for new opportunities to learn and keep getting better.
Yeah, that's great advice. What you said about letting everyone know that that's what you wanted to do. Mm-hmm. There are people who feel, I think, standoffish about letting people know, like within their company, within their studio, what they want to do.
Yeah,
so,
there's nothing wrong with having ambition for yourself, right? And if you're not an advocate for your own career, don't.
Yeah. Everyone listen to what Juliet says here. Okay. So, a lot of this, what you're talking about has to do with meetings, and I want to talk about that a little bit because it's something that a lot of people see as unproductive.
Yep.
What makes a good meeting?
So there's actually something, it's funny, I picked this up from the roundtables from another producer last year, and I think it's a catchy little acronym. For every meeting that you're in, you should bring a pad with you, right? And that's a purpose, an agenda, and deliverables. And then also, don't be afraid to call bullshit when a meeting's not going well, right? If you're invited to a meeting, if there's not an agenda in that meeting invite, you should say no to that meeting. And if you're in a meeting, even if it starts with an agenda and it goes wildly off track, I think everybody in that room is responsible, right, for keeping it on track and making sure there's value there. Because at the end of the day, in game development, time is seriously the most valuable thing that we have, and you can't waste that. There's absolutely nothing that says that that meetings by their nature are unproductive. It's just the way that we're running them, right? Let's just run better meetings. Yeah.
I need to edit some of my meeting invites. You're just reminding me.
Do you know how to do that?
So, post-it notes, sticky notes. You brought those up earlier, and it's funny because kind of recently, somebody who will remain unnamed someone's PR person tried to pitch me an interview with a producer.
Oh my God.
And they knocked the use of Post-it notes because they saw pictures of this game that was in development and Post-it notes were being used, and they kind of knocked the idea of using Post-it notes. And then I blacked out all of like any incriminating like stuff, and I posted it on Twitter, the pitch.
Yeah.
And game developers love Post-it notes. That's,
Yeah.
I mean, like I already kind of knew that they use them a lot, but using Post-it notes, I mean, they were strongly offended that anyone would say Post-it notes are detrimental to game development. How do you use Post-it notes?
Oh gosh, for literally everything. They're oftentimes like how we share ideas. There's a really cool technique that we use that's called story mapping. And if you don't know what story mapping is, totally recommend do a quick Google search on that. It's an amazing way actually to build out backlogs for your team when you're just starting out on a project. But it's a visual tool where you basically sort of walk through the player journey while you are talking it through, and then you're writing up basically Post-it notes, right, for each one of those pieces of the user story. And you actually end up getting down to, at that point, the level where you're working at user story level. And like I said, yeah, it's a great way to build out a backlog. You end up with this like wall that ends up being like probably 200 Post-it notes by the end of it. But it's like a super productive conversation. Awesome way to get all that stuff. Then maybe take the Post-it notes and like digitize those to Jira or whatever your backlog tracking solution is. But yeah, it all starts with the Post-it notes.
Yeah, some of our chat folks are agreeing on that. Redrick says, "Are you serious? Post-it notes are my life." So yeah, like someone's Post-it notes are his life. Go Gaming Tournament says, "Post-it notes are everything."
They are.
So yeah, there you go. We have more Post-it notes advocates. And I agree with that. I also use Post-it notes. So one of the things with production is hitting, deadlines is a major component of being a producer. How do you get people all on the same page and working towards a date on the calendar?
I think the biggest thing with that is, where did that date come from in the beginning, right? The best dates that I get are realistic dates where the team is super involved in the execution of those dates. Because at the end of the day, you're holding someone accountable to deliver on a promise that they never really signed up for. You're starting in a bad place, right? You're never going to be successful. Chances are with that. And so really making sure that in addition to that, of course, you're using good tracking methods that build confidence in what your dates are. I always like to start with a range for dates, right? If you're 6 months out from a project and you're saying, I'm going to ship on this exact day, I'm going to go ahead and say you're probably booking yourselves there.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably chances are that if it's that far out, you're not going to be able to. But maybe you can start to build a confidence window, right? So maybe you'll say, we'll ship in this quarter, we'll ship in this month. And then as you get closer and closer, refining that date. And I think that's the best way to sort of drive a team towards a date, right? And like I said, really making sure everyone is aligned in that creation process.
So when a date is public, how do you manage the expectations of players if it might be missed? I know that's might be more of a marketing type thing, but
yeah.
Or you're just like, that's not my problem. Like that's marketing and PR. You take care of all this. Yeah.
No. I think, yeah, that's like I said. That's definitely something that we feel accountable for on the production side. Probably would work with our great folks in publishing to help me chat with players about that. At the end of the day, though, I think honesty sort of has always been the best route forward, right? At any game studio you work at, and particularly here at Riot, because we're all players and we understand getting disappointed, right? When a date's missed, we understand that feeling, right, of disappointment, because we're disappointed too, because we want all that cool stuff that we're shipping to come out, and we definitely want it as soon as we can, right? But explaining sort of the rationale, what happened, why, right, and giving players kind of a better understanding of the intricacies of maybe why. But we try generally to wait, and we try not to promise specific dates until we're really confident that we can deliver on those dates, because we know, like I said, it sucks to get your hopes up, right?
Yeah. So what kind of production tools, like software, do you use, outside of Post-it notes?
Post-it notes would definitely make Sharpies. No.
Whiteboards?
Yeah, absolutely.
All analog.
Yeah, so we use Jira as our primary bug tracking solution that we use, but we use a lot of different tools. Some things that we have are actually in-house tools that we've developed inside of Riot that are kind of custom to our team and our needs. I actually, for my personal backlog tracking, that's just my like, what am I going to do on this day? I actually use Favreau for that, and that's a cool one for, like I said, sort of creating a little mini Kanban board for yourself where you can see and prioritize all of your work. Definitely recommend. If you don't have your own personal backlog and you're running a team with a backlog, totally, you got to get on that. You got to be managing your own backlog on every single day. So that's the first thing I do when I come in the morning is I like restack all my priorities on that board for myself. It's super easy to get in the place where you feel like you're being productive and getting things done, and you're not actually moving the ball forward right in a really meaningful way. And the best way to do that is like when you're clear and you're focused, instead of spending those first like 15 minutes at the office like getting a cup of coffee and just like randomly checking your email, spending it really reflecting on like, what do I want to actually finish at the end of this day?
I need you to I need to hire you as like my personal consultant.
I know, right? Like I'm listening to this, and I'm like, this is like so calming and nice, and like it's just like helping. Like I'm like, wait, we could run GDC like this.
No. I'm talking about me personally. I need like, because I feel. I mean, I have like a to-do list, and I kind of try to knock those down during the course of the day. But you're talking about like a pretty self-aware, organized way of being a producer on yourself personally, right?
Yeah, it starts with you, right? There's a really cool visualization of there are 4 kind of quadrants of work that you can be doing on any given day, and it's super easy to get stuck in that place. That's the urgent work, but it actually ends up not being the highest priority work for you, or not like the highest long-term value work. And it feels good, right? It feels good to tick the check boxes on a to-do list at the end of the day. Say like, yep, I did this, and this. But again, if you're really not looking at those longer term projects, because a lot of times those end up being the ones that aren't urgent, so they're not super time sensitive, and it becomes really difficult to prioritize those, right? So making sure you're carving out time for yourself, every single day too, to spend time on learning. I actually I engage in the book club here that I run. That's for our production team here at Riot. And that's just a way, like people say like, Juliet, thanks so much for running book club. I'm like, this is actually super selfish for myself, because it is a great accountability mechanism for me to make sure that every weeknight, when I come home, that I'm taking at least 15 minutes to read something that's going to make me think about, how can I be better at what I do?
But Riot is a book club. That's so cool. I'm just thinking back. I worked with some great producers when I was at a mobile game. When I was at this mobile game company here in LA, and I'm just like, but they never ran a book club. Like that's so cool.
It's super easy. I mean, I actually seriously recommend it. Like even the tiniest dev video, just pick a book that's cool, that's interesting, something that you're personally interested in learning, to kind of level yourself up and see if anybody is interested in getting in there with you.
What kind of books do you get to put in that club? Because people in the chat want to know.
Oh, okay, yeah. So we've done everything. We've done books focused on Agile. So right, some hardcore stuff like like some of the activities we've talked about, like how do you create user stories that are really focused on player value and breaking those down. But then we've done everything from leadership style books to books on tools working. Right now, like I said, I mentioned earlier, that book we're actually reading is that Essentialism book. But I think the book before that I read is a book called Mindset. That's another great one, because that's focused on not just doing Agile, but actually being Agile. And a lot of times you can lose sight of that when you focus sort of on all that nitty-gritty. Oh, okay, like am I using story things? Am I writing user stories the right way? It's not actually about. And this book's kind of frame and refocus on actually being and helping them even have all of their day-to-day work. That's I think it needs to be at.
Apologies, Juliet. We are losing your audio for some reason. I think it's a Skype thing. I think it's related to Skype.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, anyway, you had talked about prioritization. Whether you're talking about you personally in your own day, or you're talking about the team or a larger team or the studio, how do you prioritize things that need to be done?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's different every day, and that's the thing you can say in the life of a producer, right? Is that's kind of why I love the work, honestly, too, is because chances are, like, days are really alike. But for me, like I said, that mix of viewing of the long-term value of work, like I said, versus the time sensitivity of the work, that's a great place to start thinking about how you prioritize what you're doing. And then from there, it's also that responding to what the team needs, right? So at the end of the day, the reason why I'm here is really to help make sure that my teams are delivering consistently, and so I'm the person to help them and get all these, if there is any bullshit that's blocking them from doing that, and that of course has got to. That's the reason.
We lost you again.
Did I do something?
Yeah, I don't know. The audio seemed fine when you both were between matches, but guess we'll just deal with it for now.
Yeah. Sorry about that, everyone.
Okay, so
What's going on in the chat, Chris?
people saying that they can't hear Juliet.
Oh, dang, yeah.
is what's happening. Yeah.
That is.
You talked a little bit about, or like in the description for the roundtable sessions, accountability, pushing back on stakeholders when necessary. Can you talk a little bit more about that in your approach as far as accountability and stakeholders?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first key piece in managing stakeholder relationships is really understanding who your stakeholders are, and making sure that the stakeholder you have for your project are actually the ones who are going to help drive your project forward and make it better, actually. And so a lot of times.
Quick question. Sorry, I know. I went to business school, so I have some experience with this, but our audience may not all be familiar. How do you define a stakeholder?
A stakeholder really is anyone who's sort of actively funding your project, right? And is the person who, at the end of the day, they can hit the eject button on whatever. If that's a feature, right? If that, right? So that situation. Studio head if you're working in a smaller studio. But it's really that person who's they've kind of got their hand on the.
We caught most of that. Yeah, I'll try muting the game. Yeah, muting the game.
Yeah, give me some tips that it's the game sound.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right, game's all the way muted.
Yeah. So yeah, let's just take a look. Speaking of the game, how are y'all doing here? I see Skype ad for Cheez-Its at the moment, and then.
We're doing okay. 2-2 on the kills. We started another game, and I'm doing a nice job just diving and setting up kills for Juliet.
This team, though, I'm want to buy an 80 carry,
Yeah.
Say.
Sorry.
Yeah. So working with other producers, Juliet, people who are in your studio that are in your discipline as well, what kind of relationship do you have with them?
Yeah, I mean, I actually think that's one of the unique things for me about Riot is that we have a real community around what it means to work in production, and we totally understand that the best way for us to keep learning and getting better at what we do is by sharing best practices for craft. So we actually we have a Slack channel that's set up that's just for our discipline. We actually organize in communities of practices that are focused around certain areas of the craft. So we actually have a community of practice that's focused on whiteboarding techniques, believe it or not, and what are cool ways that you can introduce this concept of graphic facilitation is something that we've been talking about lately, which is helping when you're writing on a whiteboard, sort of mixing it up and varying it so that people who are more visual learners, what can you do as a producer to actually help vary it so you're not sort of ending up with blocks of text in every sort of meeting. But yeah, it's really, it ranges from informal to formal is what I'd say. So those who work together closer on teams, so I have a sort of very tight-knit group of 4 other producers that I work with that I talk to every single day. We meet weekly just to talk about things that are going on our teams. If we've come up with any sort of new ways to, track projects, track emergent work, and we do a lot of sharing there. But actually, as a discipline, we also invest pretty heavily in making sure that our entire group is getting together at least once a month to, share learnings or even just, hang out and chat. Because I think a lot of times that can, at big studios, you can lose sight of the fact that the best way to make sure that individuals are kind of leveraging each other and learning from each other is actually just to know who folks are and what they're good at, right? And that can get harder and harder as your studio gets bigger and bigger. So we really make sure we carve out time for that as well.
It's interesting how granular the best practices get, where you're talking about most effective ways to use a whiteboard, for example.
Yeah.
Can you, let's just talk about that for a minute. Like, what are some other, because you're talking about visual learners versus other types of, brains that you're working with. If you're talking about best practices at Riot, such as whiteboarding, let's talk about whiteboarding.
Yeah. So, but here's the thing: is what I think. Best practices for us. What's cool about them is, best practices are just that, right? It's hey, here's something interesting. If this is going to provide value for your team, take it or leave it, right? And so we do try to leave a lot of autonomy for individuals, because at the end of the day, folks who are working side by side with their dev team are going to be the producers who are going to understand what's going to be best for the team. But we've come up with a lot of cool ideas for best practices, and the way that we actually document them is what we have. It's called an RFC library for us. And so that actually started by our engineering department, actually. And so what that stands for is a request for comment. So they would basically go onto our Confluence page and they would say, hey, I'm working on this technical area of the game, right? Here's what I'm thinking about. And so all the engineers would go there, document any comments or any discussions they were having about it on that page. And so we ended up seeing that and thinking like, this is actually a great way for us to share learnings that we have across all of our dev managers as well, and also get feedback from every group that we have. So actually, a lot of our best practices we store on sort of an online repository, so the test time means that they won't get lost and this stuff won't become tribal knowledge. This can range from anything from effective ways to hold retrospectives. So if there's meeting designs that you have that are particularly effective, or getting to great outcomes that are actionable in retrospective, talking about that, to best ways to sort of track and measure like emergent work on your team, best ways to help with or track the team's health over time. I'm gonna die. I dive so hard.
That was it was a good dive. I thought that was worth it.
I was too brave. I was definitely too brave. But yeah, like I said, it's at this point I think we have like maybe 50 different RFCs, just again sharing learnings, and they can be things like that, the focus weeks that I talked about earlier, anything from that to best ways to just charter your team or ways to run brainstorming activities. So yeah, there's a ton there.
Real quick, you said a phrase there that I literally haven't heard since business school, but you also probably gave the best application for this phrase that I'd never heard in business school, which was tribal knowledge. Can you explain that? I know what that is, but can you explain that for our audience and why it's something that's valuable and for producers to keep in mind?
Oh yeah, absolutely, right. So when you're working on a game, and particularly when you're working on a game for a long stretch of time, there ends up being certain things that there's that one guy in your studio that knows how to do. There's that one guy who knows how to fix this, or maybe when it comes to production, you're the one person who's really mastered how to run this kind of interview, right? And so for us, we really want to make sure that we laugh and we call it the bus factor, right? Which is like the most negative frame possible. But if that one guy at your studio got hit by a bus tomorrow, would anybody know how to do that, right? And so that's like pretty much the definition for us of tribal knowledge, and making sure that we're sort of future-proofing ourselves by sharing that information as broad as we can. It's also something that's really important to do for your teams as well, for individuals, because you want to make sure that your team is really truly cross-functional and able to support their live services that they have, right? And that means you don't want to load that one hero on your team who's the guy that'll pick up the phone every time at 3 a.m. to answer that call.
Yeah.
So we really try to make sure that that's something we look for as delivery leads coming onto a team, seeing if there's any of those factors, and then figuring out how we can best share those learnings.
You know what, strangely, like I don't know if this is going to be like weirdly TMI or something, but weirdly on our team, something I've thought about is like even this Twitch streams, like just to give an example that I think how that applies for non-game jobs is on this Twitch stream, like thankfully Chris and the team have given me a lot of ability to set this up so that we can get people like you on a chat with us. But like I've sat there and I've thought like, what happens if I do like injure myself, like when I'm out just out training or something, like or like I just trip and bang my head or something, and then like how do we keep that running? And it's something to consider, like even no matter where you are, and I think for game studios there's a special problem where if it's especially like it's a creative knowledge, like it's a knowledge about how to handle a certain kind of design problem, that can be really damaging if it's not spread out for the team when that person is no longer there.
Yep, absolutely.
Not to put it to spook you, Chris, but I thought it was very direct application.
I think we'd be fine.
Yeah, you'd be good. You can figure it out.
Like you talked about, working with other producers. What about interdisciplinary relationships? You mentioned working with engineers. Sometimes people have different ideas of like how a goal should be reached. How do you handle, as a producer, keeping everybody, when there are conflicting opinions, on the same page and focused and moving towards the same goal?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because I think that, there's so many things I want to say there, right? Like, what's happened before that meeting? How did that decision actually get made? Who's had input into that, right? At the end of the day, I think actually, as I mentioned, chartering actually is a great way to help clarify a lot of expectations. I actually really suggest teams go through some sort of activity really early on in their formation where they talk about individual roles and responsibilities on teams and make those super explicit to one another. So like, hey, what am I actually responsible for on this team? And sometimes that's one of those things people are like, oh, well, duh, everyone knows that I'm the tech lead for the team, and that means that I'm responsible for all the tech, right? But actually making sure that someone's kind of picking up all of the pieces and everyone on the team knows what all those pieces are that you're picking up on the day-to-day can actually be really helpful, especially in times when there's those sort of contentious decision-making points. And then, make that list of roles and responsibilities really something that's visible, right? Like hang it up in your team pit. So everyone again is on the same sort of page about what we're actually doing here and what each individual contributor's work, what that means. I think that's like a great place to start from. And then of course there's always just having great relationships on your team, right? As a producer working with one of my teams, I think, it's like the time-tested sort of like lamest secret weapon, right, that you can have is having trust amongst all of your team members. At the end of the day, we say at Riot, we always default to, you have to believe that the people that you're working with are coming from a place of best intention. And so even if in that moment, maybe you disagree with a particular decision that's getting made, knowing that there is a real perspective for why they're doing what they're doing or what that decision point is, it makes the conversations a lot easier because it forces you to think about, continually think about and reframe things through another individual's perspective.
That secret weapon is not lame, by the way. I think that's a totally cool secret weapon. Yeah. So, for you personally, when you're going to be at the roundtable at GDC? I mean, are you going to be sharing any of the problems that you've run into and trying to draw lessons from that, explaining to other people there?
Yeah, so our goal for the roundtable really is, again, sort of in that heart of facilitation, just to unlock the wisdom of everybody who's going to be in the room there, because there's going to probably be, if it's like last year, 100 producers from totally different backgrounds, coming together from the industry and sharing their individual challenges and then things that have really worked for them. I'm totally happy after the session to share some more stories about things that have happened here and the hard lessons I've learned throughout my, all my time in the industry. But during the GDC sessions, we're going to mainly try to be focusing on telling other people's stories and, again, sort of sharing that wisdom of the room to the larger group. So it's a pretty cool design for how the sessions work. You'll actually get to, at the end of it, we'll bubble up information from all of the different kind of small breakout groups that we have. So you'll be walking away with at least 10 really cool, really actionable items of, sort of stories of things that have worked and haven't worked, and best practices that are being utilized across the industry.
Yeah, I'm sure that everything goes very smoothly, so there probably won't be much discussion.
Game development is hard. Nothing goes wrong ever. What are you talking about?
Ever.
Yeah. So how's the game going here, Bryant?
It's fairly even right now. Literally even.
I feel like we're not winning, though.
Yeah, I feel like this no ADC thing is turning into a problem.
So we have someone who says that it feels even. Someone else feels like they're losing.
That is, I mean, that's fair. That all seems very fair.
There must be some kind of production analogy that I'm completely missing there.
Well, that fight just went well, except for the fact that Juliet died.
Except for when the part where I died. I went. It's Vi. You can just
Yeah.
You can go way too deep with her ult.
This Olaf is going too deep. That is not an alternative fact.
He followed me with my spirit of ahamness.
Yeah, aham. Yes. This is aham. I think the nice thing about understanding our current situation is that we're at their end of the map, which is good.
That's true.
I'd rather this was happening down here than last game where it was all happening in front of our tower. Because now we can just keep sieging.
Yep.
A few comments from chat. Spoder Girl says she says, sounds smart. We always end up having only one expert on things when we have been working. You want to spread that knowledge around.
All right. You don't need to do that all at once too. That doesn't have to be overnight. Another thing that we really try to push for at Riot is really for all of our engineers to try to be as cross-functional as possible. So to work across technology stacks, and that's something that it's a long-term solve, right? It's not going to be something you can't expect. You're going to fix that in a night, but it's something to sort of make sure that you're pushing towards and working towards over time with your team.
Yeah, I mean, luckily, hopefully people are lucky enough also to have mentors to encourage that, because it is counterintuitive a little bit, because people think that's job security. That if I'm the one expert, then you can't get rid of me. But pretty early on for me, people are like, you have to learn everything about the business. You're not going to be an expert in like each facet of it. But I found that it's like beneficial. Plus, like what you were talking about, kind of being more empathetic with people where they're coming from. If you understand their job function a little bit more accurately, then you can understand where they're coming from, and they're not doing things maliciously. It's just but they coming from a different perspective.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of takeaways? We got about 5 minutes here, but
we're gonna go till this ARAM ends, so which hopefully is in 5 minutes, but could be 10.
Okay, well, takeaways for people who go to these production roundtables at GDC. What are you hoping people are going to learn and take back to work with them when it's all over?
Yeah, so I think that's a little bit different, depending on, like I said, we have 3 days for each of them. But I think my biggest thing is at the end of each session, I ask folks to reflect on all of the things that they've heard. Because like I said, we're going to be sharing at least kind of 10 really powerful learnings that each of the groups had throughout each of the sessions. But I think it's really important then for folks to reflect and say, what is the one thing that I'm actually going to try? It's really easy at GDC to get kind of information overload, right? Because there's so many different sessions. There's so much to process. You probably had a little bit too much to drink the night before, so you're tired.
What? No, that never happens.
That never happens.
Never. But taking kind of that time at the end of that session before you walk out and rush into your next one, just to think, what is the one thing I'm actually going to go back to and try with my team, and that is really something that's important for each of the sessions. So with our session focused around building team culture, what is that one really powerful change you're going to make in your team to either identify the team culture that you have today and solidify that, or maybe improve, a team culture where, things haven't been going quite so well, right? And for the leading for innovation, I think it's going to, the real key there will be, how do you make sure that you're constantly doing that in the face of all the other, pressing work that's going on? How are you making sure that's a priority for you and for your team as well? And then from managing stakeholders, it's going to be that kind of that little nugget that's going to tell you how to better utilize the stakeholder relationships that you have. And maybe that's really identifying the right stakeholders for your project, or what can you change in the way that you engage with your stakeholders that you already have today to help get better directional feedback for your product that's going to make it stronger and make it better.
How about you personally? You've this is going to be second year, right? That you're doing this. Last year or even organizing this year's, are there certain things that light bulbs that are going off or had gone off in your head that you took back to your own job after putting these GDC roundtables together?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like for me, I think a lot of the other value in the session is really making connections, because the roundtables are an hour, right? And a lot of the conversations and challenges that we face in production are nuanced, and we totally understand that. But meeting that one person in the room who you feel like really is going through a similar struggle that you're having, or has solved something that's really a big challenge for your team, that is super powerful, because I've ended up connecting with so many folks after the sessions and digging deeper into the conversations we've started in the room, and that's a ton of the value that I get out of it. Because at the end of the day, like I said, production is it can be really different depending on where you are, but a lot of times the struggles we go through end up being the same. And hearing from someone who's in a totally different situation from you, but has figured out a great solve for a challenge your team is encountering, is like super, super valuable.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I hear from game developers, they're tired after an event like GDC, but they feel inspired because even if you work at a big studio or at a big company, you almost feel isolated, and you forget that there are other people who are going through very similar issues that you are, and circumstances.
Yep.
Yeah. So Bryant, how's it going?
We may have just done something a little dumb.
Maybe.
Yeah, I'm not sure. This isn't going so hot right now. I want to get into this tower.
Well, I mean, Julia is like talking in depth.
I know. I don't know how she's doing
her
this.
Job. And Julia you should be like a YouTuber. It's just kind of
okay. This turned out. This is good. This is good right now. Our Olaf is. Oh, that's not so hot. That's not so hot. Taking down the tower is not hot. This is like you said earlier. We have no ADC, so taking down anything, we can siege really well. Oh, we got ace. That's bad.
That is definitely bad.
Yeah. So if you're rounding or wrapping things up here,
we're trying to. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Because I was just going to say to the viewers that if they have any more questions, there's a lot of people talking about GDC and hoping they can make it. Mm-hmm. So if anyone has any questions for Juliet, I mean, this is direct access to a world-class producer. So go ahead and drop your. Don't shake your head.
I'm
said world-class teams.
I'm just learning. I'm on the journey.
It's a great journey.
World-class learner, Juliet.
Meanwhile, this bull's charging back, I want this inhibitor down real bad.
Here we go.
Okay, is this going to be good for us? Do we
Yeah,
think?
I know.
I'm hoping so.
Whoops, I seem to have just given away our dark channel address. Our channel.
Please don't do that.
Well, I'm logged in, so we might need to configure that. So let's see. We do have a question from E.E. Klein. How do you go about conducting a scoping down session?
Oh, yeah. Those are always the heartbreak conversations, right? Um, I think it's important. And the thing that we have at Riot that is cool is since we're working on a live project, so a lot of times we're able to frame things in terms of what is our first release for a product and then what's the second release. And that actually can change the conversation because it's not what is it that we're releasing today, and this is going to be the first thing, the only thing, and the final thing. But what is the first increment that we're really excited about and we want to get out to players, and then what's the things that we're okay holding another couple months as we continue to work on things. But actually, the story mapping is a really great tool for that conversation actually to be held around, and I totally recommend, like I said, you Google that. There's some awesome online artifacts that'll show you how to run those exercises with your team. But as part of that activity, actually, you can sort of run a slicing line where you define what is MVP and what's not MVP. And that a lot of times it's going to be end up being a conversation that is hopefully driven a lot by your product lead you're working with on your team or your product owner, if that's how you refer to them. They should be, at the end of the day, that should be that single person who really understands what's going to be resonant with your players and can hopefully help guide those conversations, steer them in a good direction. And then it's sort of your role. I think one of the most important things that we can provide is making sure that everyone's voice in the room is heard, right? Because at the end of the day, anyone should be able to call bullshit on a product decision that they really don't think is the right thing for players. And that's something that is really special for Riot as well, because we really focus on every individual being an advocate for our players as well. But making sure that there's space in those rooms for everyone to feel heard.
All right, things are going better now. Let's.
Yeah, we're totally gonna win this one.
We do have another question here from Spoder Girl. She says, what is a tip you would give a graduating game designer?
Ooh.
Maybe like in general, just a graduate who's looking to get into game development in general.
Yeah, I think connecting with people is definitely probably the real obvious one. Like I said, I think a mentor can be really invaluable to you. And so, don't be afraid to, reach out to someone you see on LinkedIn who you think maybe potentially could be a great mentor for you. But be specific about what you want to learn from that individual. And that is what's really important, right? So if you understand where you want to grow and where your strengths and weaknesses are, you can say, hey, could you dedicate 20 minutes a week for the next, 4 weeks to help me learn more about how to improve my communication, to learn more about how to improve my leadership stance. And that actually can change the conversation, right? Instead of just hey, I want to talk to you about, potentially getting a job, right?
Yeah.
So I think that can be really helpful. For a game designer, I think that, collaboration is really key, right? The best game designers that I know are the people who are necessarily the ones who have like that revolutionary idea. Of course, you need that too. But it's the individual who can make everyone on the team feel like not only they have confidence in them, but they're really listening to them, working with them, and collaborating on them. Because at the end of the day, a great design is a great design. But if it's one that can't ever actually be built, right? Because you haven't paired well with your lead engineer on your team to understand what's technically feasible or not, or what's going to be really, expensive, massive, long-term sweeping project, those designs are just going to always end up staying on paper. So I definitely think the communication and collaboration are really, really key for game designers.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can wrap things up here. Way to go, you two.
Sorry, wow, that was that was a grind. I was like, I'm Juliet. I'm so impressed because I was like sitting here like getting so concentrated. I don't know how you kept that up while diving like that.
Way too many hours of playing League of Legends, I guess, probably.
Oh my god! All right, it's time
we'll squeeze in one more here. It's a quick one. Roman Lux is asking if Riot does any internal game jams like Double Fine does with their Amnesia Fortnite and all that.
Yeah, we do actually. I'm pretty sure this is on our website, but don't quote me on that one. But we have an internal, our version of a game jam is called Thunderdome, actually. And we actually have one coming up for us. It's really cool because anything that you want to work on, you get a team together and they sort of jam on that project for, I think it's 3 days in total. And we end up getting some really cool ideas out of them. Some of them have actually ended up in the game as well. But they can literally be anything. So we actually have a really cool program. Where we reach out and it's called Legendary Player Support, where we reach out to players, and you might have seen a couple of the things that have come out of it on things like Reddit, where we'll actually send like handmade items to players that have written in player support request tickets, and a lot of that actually, the whole concept for that program actually started as part of Thunderdome, and it's one of my favorite things that we do at Riot.
Nice.
That's awesome.
I've seen some cool videos with the Thunderdome. I saw I once saw like you guys cooked up a Smash version with League characters, but it was like hidden in the video because I don't think anyone wanted to know. Like that was, everyone was like, we can't let people know we did that. And here I am talking about it on Twitch stream. Anyway, it's time to wrap this puppy up. Thank you all for wasting another perfectly good hour on the Gamasutra Twitch channel. Thank you, Juliet, for joining us. If you're looking for more information on the production roundtables, there's a button down below. You can click that button, and you'll be taken to one of the roundtables, which you can then like click on, learn more about, see what they're going to be all about, where they're going to be. If you're going to GDC, that's where you can like get info about that. While you're at it, while you're down there at the bottom of the page and not looking at our beautiful faces and my Optimus Time desktop here, please be sure to click the subscribe button, because if you subscribe to this channel, you'll get push notifications when we go live, and we do awesome things like interview game developers. We have editor roundtables to talk about things like the Nintendo Switch. We also will sometimes just play a game. Like we keep going. Like Chris here just loves to just pop on a great game and just start streaming. It's a good time. We would love it if you would click subscribe. And then while I'm at it, I just need to disclose that Gamasutra and GDC are both sister organizations under UBM Americas, so we're the same organization. Please keep that in mind when we're talking about
this. Has been a giant ad the whole time. You've all been tricked.
Surprise! It's an advertisement. No, I don't know what it is. It's technically...
But yeah, it is. Go to Juliet's roundtable production.
Seriously. That was
Even if you're not in production, go.
Yeah.
I would love to chat with all of you guys. Yeah.
All right. Have a good day, everyone. I'm going to take us offline, and hopefully we'll come online again and not have...
Bye, everyone. Thanks, Juliet.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.